Welcome everyone to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about what is a lifestyle coach. Now, you might think a lifestyle coach is just going to help with your life. Now, similar to mindset coach is just going to help me with my mindset. Okay, yes, I mean, if we just look at it in that manner, but there's so much more to what a coach does. Whether you're a career coach, relationship coach, we do so much more than just help you with that aspect. Because most of the time, when a person is coming to us, they need multiple areas adjusted. And it's not that they're broken per se. It's just that they're not in balance or they're not in complete alignment. So that's what a coach is trying to do, get you into your highest self, your best version of yourself. And then from there, we can start to make progress into who you want to be. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and to share this video and our audio to help build a community of like-minded individuals. Today, I wanted to bring on a special guest. He's going to be a lifestyle coach, Edward Paget, and he has so much wisdom to share with us. Just in this episode alone, I mean, him and I could have been talking for hours at end, and the conclusion would have been the same. An awesome episode. And in this episode, you're going to learn so many different things. Whether it be from finding your purpose, passion, your gift, how important nutrition is, how important it is to raise children, homeschooling. I mean, you name it, we talked about it. This episode is going to be a must-watch episode, must-listen-to episode. Not only because I said so, but because it is so. Now, I know I've said that in the past, and I might say it even more, but as mindset goes, mindset evolves. And so the conversation and coaching a session becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And as we go down that figurative rabbit hole, we're finding answers that we might have never thought there was an answer to. So let's get into that interview with Edward and myself, and let's begin to find the answers. Welcome, Edward Paget, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And I have you on today. You are a lifestyle coach. You do an abundance of things, whether it's helping people from their health to finding their purpose. But in your own words, can you please tell the world what you do?
Yes, I can. So I started life as a sport and exercise scientist, and that led me into a thing called osteopathy. And osteopathy is like physiotherapy, chiropractic combined, the way I do it, some manual therapy. But what I realized was that people were coming in with injuries, but really they needed their lifestyle addressing. Mm-hmm. And so over time, I developed a practice where we can talk about your back pain, but how that actually is a symptom of a bigger picture with lifestyle. So I help people recover from illness and injury, but I do that through a lifestyle approach.
Do you say that this lifestyle that many people are getting themselves into is kind of like the norm of what society is pushing people into? So many people are just going to be unhealthy, unhappy, and unfocused?
Yeah, pretty much. There was this a study came out recently where, I forget the actual numbers, but they looked at a bunch of Americans from 18 years old to 80 years old. And they were looking at their metabolic health. So they're looking at things like their blood pressure, their cholesterol, their weight to height ratios. And they worked out there was only 12% of them that are actually metabolically healthy. Mm-hmm. And all those things are controllable through lifestyle. So yeah, it's something it's a phenomena or a symptom of our modern way of living.
How would someone know that they need a lifestyle coach? Is there like a sign or like a trauma that they go through before they come see you? Or is it something like they just say on January 1st, New Year's resolution, they say last year I wasn't able to reach my goals or my resolution. So this year I'm going to make sure I have someone who can hold me accountable. And then we're going to work together to get me to my goals.
Yeah, but so what you suggested there is true. Some people will be actively looking for a lifestyle coach, but other people don't know what a lifestyle coach is or why you would need one or, what we can do for people. So I tend to do it slightly differently. I look for people who have had trouble recovering from an illness or from an injury. Mm-hmm. And then when I look at what they've tried and what they're doing, and I ask questions about their lifestyle, I sort of just slowly bring in the lifestyle coaching like that. So it's not necessarily that they're finding me to cover all these areas, although I think in the future when lifestyle coaching becomes more mainstream, people will. But at the moment, I'm just using it as a tool to help people recover from the illness and injury.
Those illnesses, would you say that's going to be hereditary or is it going to be something that they do to themselves, whether it be they just don't take care of themselves because they never learned that health and nutrition is important to them until their body finally breaks apart? Or is it something that they finally say, oh, you know what? My back is hurting. My leg is hurting. Something's wrong.
Yeah. So if I give you an example of a typical client. So recently I was helping this gentleman in Canada, and I'm based in Central America. So we do this online, but we can also do it in person if people come down to Central America, to Nicaragua. And I run retreats where they can come and experience this in person. So a gentleman contacted me in Canada, and he was on medical leave from work through stress. And he had really bad back pain, and that was part of the problem. So we got chatting, and it turns out it's not just his back pain. His blood pressure is up. His cholesterol is up, according to his doctor. And he's 40-something years old, and he feels like this shouldn't be happening to him. He shouldn't have back pain where he can't sit, and he shouldn't have any health problems. So again, the weigh-in was back pain, and we talked about that. We gave him some exercises. But then I was like, well, tell me about work. Like, what is happening there? And he's like, well, I'm just not happy. I don't feel like this is what I want to do in life. So we shifted into purpose. So what do you want to do? Well, I want to be self-employed. And we talked a lot about that. And he had 6 weeks medical leave to basically come up with a plan. Then we had a look at his sleep, which was really bad. We looked at his recovery, his nutrition, which needed tweaking a little bit. And then his general biomechanics, which are the way he moves. And he's an office worker and has been his whole life. And he also was a competitive cyclist. So he has this, or had a sort of posture that was built around sitting and cycling. And so I worked with that as well. And we put all that together. He ended up modifying his work hours completely to just part-time so that then he can work on his own thing, his own business, whilst his back pain got better and his fitness improved as well.
Okay. So it's kind of like the whole picture more so than one problem. And then we just focus on one problem because It could be an accumulation of things, right?
Exactly. So most therapists are very siloed into what they do. And especially in America, in the US, it's like you go to school to train to be an orthopedic physiotherapist or a pediatric physiotherapist or whatever. And, you're chatting to someone about their arthritis, and there's a thing called rheumatoid arthritis, which is autoimmune disease. And you'll be working that in someone's ankle, let's say. Now, as a physiotherapist, you can't talk to that person about their nutrition, even though we know that rheumatoid arthritis responds very well to changes in nutrition. So to me, as a therapist that's treating the whole body, I feel as though not knowing about nutrition is a disservice to my patients. And sure, I could refer them to someone else who does nutrition, and I do when I need to, when it's specific. But having a sort of a general understanding that covers 80% of people is where I like to work. My specialism is biomechanics, but I also work in these other areas as well.
Yeah, of course, because it's more than just fitness or body movement. It's going to be nutrition too. That's a huge aspect. And when people come to me, they say, well, I want to lose weight, right? And so they want a workout plan. And I'm like, okay, well, we can get a workout plan, but what are you eating? Like tell me what you're eating. And they're like, oh, well, I'm just like eating whatever. And I'm like, well, that's problem number one. Like we need to address that too. Because many people think, well, if I go to the gym, everything's going to be better. Or if they just eat a salad once a week, everything is magically better and they lose all this weight. I don't know if it's mainstream media, social media, where they have all these magazines and they say, if you do this diet for 30 days, you're going to look just like this person. And that's farthest from the truth. And if they are able to attain, it's going to be extremely unhealthy to get or to lose all that weight to get to that physique. And it takes years sometimes to get your body back to where it should be because we do so much damage, and it's easier to damage your body than it is to repair the body. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we can. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think as a percentage from nutrition versus gym, like which one is going to be best for weight loss? I'm just interested to see how you...
Nutrition. I believe nutrition is 70 to 80% of the picture.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's around that mark. And when you start going to the gym, you end up eating more because you've gone to the gym and you actually end up putting on more weight. And it's not muscle. All right, so we're going to talk about the difference between sort of how you can harm yourself and how you can help yourself. Mm-hmm. And So one of the ways of looking at that is, what is our body designed to do? Our body is designed to move. Our body is designed to eat fresh fruits, vegetables, meat, whatever sort of category you are on the dietary spectrum. We're omnivores. I think we can all agree with that. And so we can eat a bit of everything. And if we go back from an evolutionary point of view, the food we ate would not be processed. The movement we did was going to be whole body movements, climbing, jumping, throwing, scrambling, lifting, all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're designed to do. So our body does well when we do that. However, in the modern world, we think that is extreme. We think it's kind of extreme to move our bodies for 2-3 hours a day. We think it's extreme to actually eat a very clean diet with no processed food. And I think that is why it's actually harder to see huge health benefits when you clean everything up than it is to see the disease and degeneration happening when you make things bad. But having said that, the body does have a remarkable capacity to tolerate or to adapt to bad things. So, we can eat a poor diet for years and years and years. We can go without exercising for years and years and years. And it doesn't catch up with us straight away. But on the flip side, if we go from eating a really bad diet to eating something that's very clean, the detox mechanisms can kick in quite quickly as well. And so we can, depending on how bad we are, we can see a rapid change. So I think I may have contradicted myself a little bit in there, but the point is that we're designed to do one thing. And when we clean everything up and do that one thing, our body can change. But it also has an amazing ability to adapt and tolerate and cope with a lot of bad stuff. But I think it's easier to get sick than it is to get healthy.
And the liver is going to be our main organ that's going to be helping us detox, get rid of all the bad stuff, whether it be alcohol, processed foods. Like our liver does so much for us. And if you think about it, like if you have, let's say like a car tire, right? And you keep driving on it every single day, eventually that tire is going to wear down. And the liver is the same thing. When you were giving it unnecessary work, it's literally working until it's not going to be as efficient. And I'm not saying that we can't repair or that if we damaged it to a certain degree that we're never going to be back to normal, because I think that's not the case. I think we can get to a healthy lifestyle, even if we maybe were an alcoholic for 10 years. And then now we're doing the repair work, or we're doing what was necessary to make sure we're in better health. Because I hear so many times people will say, I'm on this diet and this diet works so well for me, and they feel like 100%. The moment they get off it, they're like, I don't know what's going on. Like my body doesn't know what's happening. I feel terrible, sluggish, like all of these different things. And it's because they went off their diet. When people finally say, okay, I'm going to change my diet, and they really become aware of what they eat, maybe not so much fast food, more fruits, more vegetables. If you eat meat, more organic meat, maybe not something like fatty pork. I mean, there's different diets and things like that, and you have preferences too. I mean, nutrition is one of those things that I think is more so unique to the body, because maybe you grew up in the Caribbean where they eat a certain amount of pork. And then so their body's already used to dealing with pork from their DNA. And now if you go, let's say to here in America, we eat a lot of red meat. So it's different. So if you come over here to America, you're eating a lot of red meat and you're like, my body's not used to that. And then the body has to adjust. What is the process like for when someone is adjusting their nutrition from maybe regions or just by age groups? So when you're young, you can eat a lot of food, you'll be good. But when you're like 50, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I think the body does change its ability to process certain foods as it ages. So we don't want to give elderly, and I would classify elderly as, 75 and over, too many raw vegetables. It's kind of hard for them to digest. We don't want to give them too much red meat. Or if we do, we want it to be cooked, because the cooking process helps break down some of the proteins and some of the plant phytochemicals to make the whole thing easier to digest. And then you can actually take out more nutrients from the food as well. And I know my raw vegan friends will disagree with me, but that's where we disagree. I think cooking actually enhances the food and makes it more bioavailable, and they say it doesn't. But anyway, that's a debate. So there's going to be changes through different ages, and then from different regions. You're right. There is some research to suggest that the northern tribes in Canada, the Inuits, can eat more meat and tolerate more vitamin E, I believe it is, in the meat than people from the equatorial regions who would eat more fruit and vegetables. And so there is that DNA adaptation for sure. So if you took a Polynesian and put them up in the Arctic, and you took an Inuit and put them in the Polynesia, there will be some adjustment. I don't really know how to answer your question there, because I have never actually come across that with my client base. Someone moving that much and changing their diet that radically. I haven't seen that.
I think it's more so just a societal thing, more so than a body natural change, because the body's going to adapt. Think of, for example, if you're in a very cold climate and you move somewhere hot, the first year might be uncomfortable for you. And then you kind of get used to it. And then vice versa, if you're somewhere hot, you go somewhere cold, you get used to the cold. I'm from Connecticut, and Connecticut is very cold in the winter. And now I live in Texas, and it's pretty mild throughout the year. When I was in Connecticut, it could be 0 degrees. I felt nothing. I was like, whatever, right? But now if I go back to Connecticut, I'm like, well, it's pretty cold here and it's only 50 degrees. So my blood or my body has changed. And just the past 4 years, 5 years of me being down here, from not being in that cold, because my body finally said, well, he doesn't have to be used to the cold anymore. So it just adapts slowly. It might not be like a long process like evolution, how it took us millions of years to get to where we are today. It could be a quick process where after a year, after the body realizes, hey, we don't use this. And then guess what happens? It says, well, we're not going to get used to the cold anymore. We're just going to accept the heat, and heat's going to be our factor that we pay attention to. And then that kind of leads us to how society is today. I would say that society is more fragile today than it was a million years ago.
Yeah, I would agree, 100%. So going back to what you just said about this like adaptation to the hot or the cold, that takes energy, and our body is super efficient at not expending energy. I mean, that's kind of its job. This is why we have the obesity epidemic and so on, because we're brilliant at storing food in case the famine comes, because that's how we've evolved. And if you look at the two bookmarks of, let's say, temperature, so you've got cold and hot. Well, there's this way of adapting to keep our core temperature the same. Okay, so we sweat and we shiver. But both those things take energy. And so it's not comfortable to sweat or shiver, because it's a signal to our body to say, well, you know what? You need to do something about this. So, put on clothes or turn on the AC. And that's the kicker right there. So now we go from this climate controlled environment, especially in Northern Europe and in the US, where our body doesn't really need to do any work to get cold or to get hot. This is developing this fragileness. Now I see this fragileness naturally in the elderly. So for example, when you have someone who's in their, let's say, 70s or 80s, and I actually think of my mother in this case, if she came to Canada, where I used to live in Canada, she couldn't handle the cold. It would throw her blood sugars off. She's diabetic. So we would have some sort of monitoring on this. It would stress her body too much. Then if it's hot, it also stresses her body too much, throws her blood sugar off and so on. And so she can't adapt to that. So there's this narrower and narrower window of her adaptability. And eventually, when she passes away, it's going to basically be that she did not adapt to that situation, whatever it is, heart failure or whatever. So with us as children, we have a narrow window of adaptation. Then it gets wider and wider and wider as we get stronger into our teens and our early 20s and so on. And then it starts to narrow down a little bit. And I think if we push ourselves a little bit with this, there's a new kind of phenomenon of ice bathing, for example, the cold water immersion. So that pushes us one way to adapt to that cold. And then there's this fire and ice concept, which you may have seen, where people are putting saunas next to their ice baths. And so they're going the other extreme. And I like that. I like the fact that these people are exercising the limits of what their body can adapt to keep them less fragile, as you said. But generally, the average person, you're right, they're in that climate controlled environment. They're not testing their body in any way, shape, or form.
Would you recommend like people going into saunas, doing ice baths, going into hot tubs, and then into cold pools, things like that, to kind of shock the body, to kind of shock the system, to say, hey, wake up, get used to this? Or would it be better for people just to kind of stay, well, if you're in this type of environment, just stay there and things should be okay and we can adapt to that? Or should we just like challenge our body here and there?
I think the body responds really well to challenge. We can say, and it's a very intellectual argument to say, look, my life involves working in office. I have a nice car. I go for some walks at the weekends. and I don't really need to push my body. That is a valid point, and I agree with that. You don't need to. However, the physiology of your body craves stress. It craves originality. And with the work of people like Wim Hof, they're now getting in and understanding what happens to the bloods and the hormonal profiles and the reaction to stress when you actually go into cold. And the body responds really well to that. Mm-hmm. So personally, I'm not going to show you, but it's literally just behind here. I have my freezer set up and I will do cold plunging. Mm-hmm. And then I live in a country where it's really hot. So I don't necessarily need a sauna. I just need to go in the sun. And my skin isn't great going in the sun. So I sort of do that in a smart way. But at the same time, I definitely get this contrast between the hot and the cold. And I personally practice that.
Mm-hmm. When we don't have that, again, like that fragile type of, or that challenge that we give ourselves, so we don't give our body that stress, right? So us one stress going from a hot to a cold, cold to a hot, right? Our body gets that stress. Do you think since we're not giving our body certain stresses that we would have had, again, in the beginning of our evolution, now is kind of going up to our mental? So now we're more getting a mental stress, more anxiety, all of the stuff that's happening in our mind rather than in our body. So our body just switched from saying, well, our body's not being stressed, so I'm going to stress the mind.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think our body just switched. I think our society switched. Do not stress the body. And now, we're stressing the mind. That classic example of you're in traffic and you're getting the cortisol release because you're stressed about something. The body still responds the same way to stresses of the mind. I don't think we kind of separate them out too much. And because we're not physically moving anymore, that mental stress of like anger or irritation in traffic cause a physical response, but we're not moving and we're not using those hormones. And so that's what leads to blood sugar problems, metabolic disease, and so on, because we're not expressing ourselves physically. Yeah, I like where you're going with that. And yeah, there's definitely an aspect to the mental stress has changed. I think, who knows? We don't know what was happening hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, but I think the mental stress has built up here. But the more you stress yourself physically, the idea is the better you can cope with the mental stress. So you can train your body to influence your mind, and you can also train your mind to influence your body.
That stress is just going to be, just like you said, society, right? Society is kind of giving us that stress. It's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, where I have to have what my neighbor has. I have to have this car, wear these clothes. And then it kind of puts us in a rat race where we're trying to live paycheck to paycheck. We're paying off mortgages, car loans, things that we don't necessarily need, but we crave. Society is maybe putting us in the wrong direction, from the foods we eat, nutrition, to now to the things we own, putting us in a rat race. Is there a cure for what society is doing right now?
Oh, that's a huge question. Is there a cure? I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know. But what I can tell you is my own experience. I go to university, one university, and I graduate exercise and sports science. And, what do you do as an exercise and sports scientist? I don't know, became a personal trainer, looked into that kind of thing. Then it didn't really work for me. I wasn't really helping people the way I wanted to. So then osteopathy, that was a 4-year degree. So now I'm at university for 7 years, got the debts mounting up. So I ended up actually going to Canada, leaving England, where I'm from originally, going to Canada, building a clinic there, working super hard, every hour that I could to start paying off my debts. Then I have a young family, get a house, got to work harder and harder and harder to pay for all that. And I'm telling my stressed out clients to chill out, question their choices around their jobs, change their diets. And yet I'm not doing this stuff myself. And so now I'm 10 years into this business. I thought I was fit and healthy. On the outside, I did everything right. I would go to the mountains in Canada and fill up water bottles with spring water. I knew all the farmers where I got my food from. Everything was great, but I knew something was off. And an opportunity came up to sell my business, and I did. And then I left North America, came to Central America, and now I'm like, out of the rat race. And so is there a cure? This isn't an option for everybody, and I understand that. But being here in Central America and looking at the families here that we would say are poor in North America, or Europe would say, oh, these are poor families. They don't have any much material assets, but they are happy. And there's a huge difference between the poor in North America who are poor and they want more, and the people here, the poor here who, are happy. They've got what they've got. Maybe they own their house because it's generational, but they just spend their life, a little bit of fishing, a little bit of surfing. It's a very simple life down here, but they are happy.
And that leads, is a simple life a slow life, or is a simple life a fast life? Because here in America, everything is so fast, where it's like, before we know it, Monday is now Friday and 30 is now 60, versus maybe over there, they have an opportunity to appreciate when they're 30, when they're 31, 35, where they're not rushing. Everyone is rushing here in America. This is going to make me happy. So they put a contingency, they give themselves a goal, and they try to reach it as quick as possible. And when they finally reach that goal, typically happiness is not waiting there for them. Kind of talking about that aspect, right? Is living a slow life maybe more inclined to happiness, or can a fast-paced life bring happiness also?
I think both. So let's say that the people here in Nicaragua, if we walk around the town in the evening, you'll have whole families sitting out on their doorstep, talking to other families, saying hi to people walk past, and they're not on their cell phones. And this to me is like a revelation. And what's interesting is they're the same families and the same doorsteps every night. And so I'll go for a jog or a run or whatever, and I'll say hi to the same people. And you can be here for 2 or 3 weeks and get a feel of the place. Now, back in Canada, I was in a place called Calgary, and I left here a couple of years ago to go back and do some work there for a few months. And I did the same run, same route that I would do here in the evenings, and I didn't see the same person twice. I knew no one. Same route, like looking for people to wave at, and it just dawned on me that I would never meet anyone in Canada doing that route. Whereas in Nicaragua, I could stop and I could chat to these people after a few weeks because they knew my face and so on. Mm-hmm. The people here are slower, and there's a slower pace, and are more community-minded. Now, having said that, if you've got a passion and a purpose, and you feel like you have something that you want to give to the world, you can go for it and go fast, because that's going to give you joy and happiness. If you feel like you're really contributing to the world, then why hold yourself back? So you've got two different aspects. Now, I'm not saying that people who aren't doing that are not contributing to the world, but I know people who are driven and focused and happy because they are doing the thing that they feel like they're born to do.
Sometimes people misconstrue their purpose with selfishness. My passion, my purpose is giving to people, where if I can help someone be better than they were yesterday, I did my job for that day. Versus someone might only be solely looking at their life, themselves. How can I be better? My money, right? Very selfish type of mentality. And what that does is it can create a plethora of issues, loneliness, anxiety, you name it, is probably there. But those people later on in life, spoiler alert, won't find fulfillment. Now they're reaching out to you, Edward. And they're like, Edward, I want to find my passion. I want to find my purpose. And they thought their purpose was making all this money, having all this material wealth, and they finally get there and it's not there. Like, what do you say to these people who were lied to, basically?
Yeah, no, you're right. So the people I work with, more recently anyway, are generally men who have gone to university, gone to school, graduated, got a job, worked their asses off, maybe found a wife, had some kids, and they've been head down to the grindstone, and they hit their 40s. And then suddenly the kids are a little bit older, take care of themselves. They've got some financial stability, and they come up like this. What am I doing? And we can call that a midlife crisis, but I actually don't call it that. I just call it like this first time in their lives they can actually breathe, and they start to question things. And so you're right. It may be that they were selfish before, or maybe that they were living out, some of the ideals of their parents or society or whatever we want to call it. I wouldn't label all these people selfish. But there's this time now where they're like, okay, I'm actually quite good at this thing, but I don't like doing it. So what do I do? What's my passion and purpose? And then there's one of the things I use is that Japanese concept of igaki. Have you heard of that?
Remind me. I think as soon as you tell me, I'm going to be like, yep, I heard it.
Yeah. It's like, what are you good at?
Mm.
What does the world need and what can you get paid for? And you put those three rings together, and right in the middle is the igaki, is the purpose. And so it's hard. Like there's some people who never find their sort of what they're good at, what the world needs, and what they can get paid for. You can sometimes have two of those things or one of those things, but you get all three, and then that's a ticket to never working again in your life, because what you're doing is your passion.
Going back a little bit, because I wanted to touch base on this because this is so important.
Yeah.
Where you live in Nicaragua, there's not everyone on their cell phones. I just want to ask you this, and then I'm going to kind of go on. Is it because they don't have the cell phones, or is it because of the culture?
It's a good question. So cell phones here are pretty cheap. For me, coming from North America, coming from Canada, where I think cell phone plans are the most expensive in the world. Someone told me that once. So they're pretty cheap, but relatively they're going to be expensive for most people. So a family will have some sort of communication, because WhatsApp is the way everyone communicates. So they will have a cell phone. They might not have a smartphone. So you're right. Maybe they're not on their screens because of that. However, there's also this huge secondhand market in cell phones, and this is a very resourceful country. And so if they wanted a cell phone, a screen, they can get one. And interestingly, there's lots of free Wi-Fi now throughout the town, and some of that's provided for by the local council, the local government. So it's not that they can't have access to it. It's just, I feel as though it's not something that they want to get into.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a society thing. Do you see down there, like there's a strong family hold, like there's a matriarch, like each household patriarch in each household, where they have that elder that kind of keeps everyone balanced?
Yeah.
Because here in America, we don't have that really.
No, and I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. So here in America, we're told that the nuclear family is the key, right? So you as a man, you meet up with someone, you marry them, you have a couple of kids, you are in charge. You're the guy. You don't need your cousins, you don't need your grandparents, they're peripheral to your nuclear family. But here it's different. You have multi-generational houses, and the person in there, they usually have children a bit younger. So the person in their 20s is now having children, but they're still not responsible. The weight of the world has not gone into their shoulders, even though they've had children. That is probably not even their parents' responsibility. That's their grandparents' responsibility. So the elder, the matriarch or the patriarch, is usually a lot older here and that is the person that assumes the responsibility for the entire family. Whereas in North America and Europe, it's like as soon as you get your house and get your kids, now it's your responsibility. And I think that puts a huge amount of pressure on a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old, whereas here that pressure is distributed up and up to the 60 and 70-year-olds.
When I was still living in Connecticut, my great grandmother was alive,
Right.
and she was 80, 90 years old up there when I was growing up. She was the matriarch for the family. Everyone would come see her. Every day, every week, someone was stopping by. And we had family in Puerto Rico. They would come see her. Family all around the country would come see her. She was like a magnet for people. She brought people together. And when she passed away, you can see the whole family kind of dissolve.
They're fragmented.
Yeah. And everyone just kind of did their own thing. Well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. No one from Puerto Rico has come to visit, and it's been 6 years now since she has passed. And it's like that one person was the glue for the whole family. And once that was gone, boom, everyone is just kind of like free for all. And then now they don't have that structure, that support anymore. And it leads to so many different things now. Mental health, getting to the rat race, trying to find your purpose, because now you don't have a purpose because you thought your purpose was a family, but now it's no longer there. So you're creating a new purpose, but they have that purpose right there. And they have that wisdom from their elders that is so important. And I think wisdom trumps knowledge, not to bash knowledge, but wisdom is so important because it teaches you so many more lessons than knowledge will ever teach you. Think about riding a bike. You could read hundreds of books of how to ride a bike. You need the wisdom to ride that bike. You have to get that experience. That experience is going to lead to so much more. And I find that it brings so much more joy with wisdom than it does knowledge, because you can see it in those families. They're not on the front porch yelling and screaming at each other, most likely. They're probably playing a game, probably talking. They found a balance. But if they ever lost that matriarch, patriarch type of familyhood, then you would start to see how they started to dissipate and kind of go or gravitate more to how the North is right now. And it's kind of like free for all, everyone on their own. I think that's destructive. And I think that's where society is going. Everyone's having a free for all. When us humans, we really need people to live, basically. If you go to the grocery store, most likely you didn't grow that apple. No. You didn't grow that cucumber, right? Someone did that. And you just trade money for those goods. We don't see that. We see, I go to the grocery store, I use my money that I earned, and then I got my food, right? My food, right? So everyone, I hate to use the word selfish, but it's like they forget that it's all togetherhood where everyone has a hand. And especially in raising children, teachers, parents, grandparents, other parents from other families, they all have a hand in raising your child. You might not want it, but at the same time, your kid is going to see that. And then right now, our kids see a lot of social media, a lot of negative news here in America, but down there, they're not on their phones seeing that. They see how grandma and grandpa are, how mom and dad are, how do we treat our neighbors? That is so different.
Totally. The community here is different. And it's interesting because the US and Nicaragua have a checkered history. And so the US has sanctions on Nicaragua. So we don't have many US imports here. There's no American cars, for example. They're Japanese. There's no McDonald's. There's no fast food restaurants in this whole town, which is amazing. But I see a little glimpse with the teenagers of my Nicaraguan friends. They are on their screens a little bit more than the others. And you can see that they're looking at the West, not the Westerners, the gringos, we can call them, the people from North America come down. They're like, so how did they get that car? Or how did they get that house? And I can see a little bit that they're beginning to compare. So it's that sort of export from North America is coming down. But have you read Sapiens by Harari? That's where he talks about it wasn't some big conspiracy to break up the family necessarily, but it was when we start paying taxes, and I may be misquoting him slightly, to the government, and the government says, well, if you get in trouble, we'll give you a lawyer to actually help you. So you don't need to ask your family anymore for that. Or, generationally, your parents, grandparents, and so on were all cobblers. They made shoes. But now you can go to university, you can do whatever you want because we're going to give you a loan to go to university, and so there's that. He talks about this breakdown of the family units because of this independence, this rugged independence that has been somehow helped by the government institutions and private institutions they want us to make money in a different way. And it's this whole capitalist society, which is a little different from down here. But anyway, he outlines that brilliantly, exactly what you're talking about, how it goes from like it is here in traditional cultures into the North American, European cultures.
And then we just have to start to think, how do we stop it? How do we mitigate it? Or how do we repair it? I saw this in the schools because I was a former educator. You can see the problems happening just from each grade. So if you're dealing with 8th graders, you can see their problems and how it just compounds as they get older. And by the time they're all done with high school, they are a total wreck. Even though they graduated, they put on a smile. They have so much stress, so much anxiety, so much worry, and they have so many different things running in their head. And they don't even have the tools to deal with half of them. So they're basically left on their own to figure things out. And that's where we get into the issue of, well, I guess, I have to just keep doing what I'm doing. And then that's when they get the student loans and they don't realize how much money that is. So they're 18, they're going for a career that they might not love. So they finally get the 4-year degree and they finally start working in the degree and they realize they hate it. So they're miserable and they just do this job because they have to pay off the debts. And maybe they have a family now coming up. So they have to support the family. So they sacrifice their passion or their purpose or their own happiness because they followed a path and that path led them skewed or astray per se. And now they're just literally trying to make ends meet, going back into the rat race. I mean, it's a full circle, like how we just talked about everything. And, having someone like a lifestyle coach or mindset coach or whichever coach, that is going to be the start to help repair whatever is happening in your life. That repair is going to be unique to you because everyone's going to have a different type of upbringing. I grew up different. I'm sure you grew up differently. And if you had to do any work to repair, that was probably not going to be the same, or it might be maybe similar to what I've went through. But at the same time, that's why working with someone who's just not giving you generalized curriculum, how the schools do, they give you one curriculum that matches everyone. That's very unlikely. I mean, you might be able to hit 60, at most 80% of people. But what about the last 20%, right? The 20% that won't get anything from school. Where do they get that from? I saw the hole in the school system and I said I wanted to do something more. So that's why I became a mindset coach. And I think it's similar to you, how you became a lifestyle coach is you saw that there are so many things like mental health, men's health, nutrition, purpose, passion, all of those things that needed to be addressed. And people were looking for answers. And then you found that gap and you found that purpose in what you wanted to do, how you could help the world. And then you went with it.
Totally. And, when you summarize it like that, I feel like if I'm working with men or women in their midlife, it's not too late because it's not too late for them. But what if we can get back right to when they're 16 or even younger and teach the kids this way of thinking, this holistic way of thinking? We're less likely to have the problem in their midlife.
And that's why I say wisdom trumps knowledge. Exactly. It's because that's wisdom.
Yeah. We're coming in with it's knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And we're coming in with the knowledge and some experience. What the kids are, we're gonna share that wisdom with them so they can hopefully avoid the mistakes that most of us are making in our later life. One of the things that I was thinking about with kids is, we'll give them a driver's license to drive a 1.5 ton, 2 ton vehicle at 80, 90 miles an hour around. Yet we don't give them the tools to regulate their breathing to control their stress response. Like it's crazy. You get this stress response. We have this lizard brain. We have these automatic hardwired adrenal responses, and we can mitigate those with breath work and mindfulness. Yet we're not teaching that. It should go along with the driver's license,
I think that's just going to be a society thing where mindfulness is not part of the equation. It's not part of the curriculum. It's going to be reading, writing, math, and maybe history, right? So just depending on the grade level, science to biology. But it's not much beyond that, right? I mean, in recent years, we do a little bit in the younger grades, like kindergarten, first grade, how to deal with emotions. But it's only the surface level where it's kind of like, all right, I'm angry. What does this mean? How do I deal with it? And then it kind of just allows the teachers later on, so when they're in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, to manage them a little bit easier because now they can say, hey, just take a little break. You might be a little bit upset right now. And then the kid can say, yeah, I am upset, versus the kid not knowing how they feel. But then if they had the opportunity to be mindful, to do some reflection on who they are, that goes into the upbringing in the household. How do parents teach their kids? Because parents are supposed to be also having a hand in the education of their kids. But here in America, many parents pass off that duty to teachers and and teachers don't have the time to teach them all of these different things, mindfulness, finding your passion, things like that. That's the parent's job. But yet we just pass it off and hope everything is going to be okay.
Totally. There's a school here, little private school that we send the kids to, and it's fantastic. And they do each they call it a unit of learning. Will have a really interesting philosophy behind it. And every Friday they actually do mindfulness. They do Wim Hof breathing up at the school. The principal's really into it. But interestingly, my daughter's 11 and she writes me this letter and she says, Daddy, I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to be homeschooled. And I was like, okay, but the school's great. I'm involved in the school. I actually teach up at the school. I teach parkour movement. And so I was a bit kind of confused why she wanted to homeschool. And then we dug down into it, and she's not being challenged in certain subjects. The school's very small. It doesn't have different sets for different academic abilities. Everyone's lumped together. And I understand where she's coming from. And so we're developing what we call daddy homeschool. And with that, I'm talking about mind, body, spirit. And for my way I talk to my clients, I talk about matter being the physical matter of their body. And that's nutrition, that's sleep, everything goes into a lot of things go into matter. Then we have mindset, which is used like a mindfulness coach. And then we have mojo, which is the magic. So we put spirituality in there. So you've got mind, body, spirit, but matter, mindset, and mojo. And I'm saying to her, okay, like if we're going to learn stuff online from an online school, when that finishes, we're going to be working with your body, with nutrition. We're going to be working with your body, with movement and sport and education. But also we're going to do a lot to do with spirituality and mojo. And so even though I work online and I work with people in person, I'm going to find time to homeschool my daughter because I feel like it's a huge responsibility, but very important to set her up right. She's 11, to set her up right for high school in the future.
And does she have any inclinations or a yearning to go to like back to school and just not finish up her high school career being homeschooled?
We haven't even started the homeschooling. So
okay.
We're finishing this academic year in school. It's next academic year we're going to start the homeschooling. But I'm laying it down now because I want to know what she expects from me and what I expect from her. We have to be very clear with that before we make the decision not to go back to school.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's important to understand. And I know many parents are going to be interested in that because I have a good parent audience and many parents are transitioning from teaching in the public schools to teaching at home now.
Yeah.
So they're always looking for resources of how they can teach their children how to be homeschooled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here in this community, the school isn't for everybody, and it's small, so not everyone gets into it. So there is a huge homeschooling group here. And where I lived back in Canada, there was a homeschooling group as well. But interestingly, in the UK, I've never met anyone that homeschooled their kids. And I've got 3 sisters who are all teachers. And I talked to them about homeschooling my daughter, and they were like, why would you do that? Like that's ridiculous because it's just not done in the UK. So it's going to be interesting for me to do it. But I feel as though if I look back and I say, okay, I was working 60, 70 hours a week. My wife at the time, we worked together in our osteopathic clinic. That was our focus. And we actually had a nanny who was looking after the kids at home. And now it's shifted that the kids are here with me and I'm going to be actively participating in their education. I feel as though the move to Nicaragua has given me the time in which to do that. Whereas if I was back in Canada, I wouldn't have that time. If I was in England, I wouldn't have that time. Mm-hmm. And so it's a year, maybe 2 years, and then we can put her back into education if she wants to. So I feel as though it's going to be a huge privilege for me to be involved in that, in developing her mind, body, and spirit.
And I'm completely interested in that homeschooling program because I plan on doing something similar where I'm going to utilize schools still, but not public schools. It would be like private schools, Montessori schools, a different type of school where as long as there's a good balance, a good ratio to students to culture, then it's going to work for me. So I do have to look at many aspects before I put them in any school. And then after that, when they come home, it's going to be almost like online schooling or homeschooling because education in this house is not going to end after 3:00 when the bell rings at school. You're going to come home and we have more education. When I was younger, I went home, I played video games, watched TV. I wouldn't say that was a total waste of my childhood because I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I think if they don't have that stimuli and they don't understand it, they won't seek it. So for example, think of sugar. If you never had sugar, you're not going to crave it really, right? But as soon as you have that cake, you're like, wow, this is delicious. And then you crave it. You don't need it. You crave it. You want it. And it's the same thing, I think, with video games, cartoons, stuff like that. Like we crave it. We seek it because it brings us enjoyment. And then at the same time, going back to what we said in our beginning, the brain or the body wants nothing more than to save energy. So if we can sit on the sofa and watch TV and movie and play video games and not expend any energy, the brain is going to say, this is heaven. Keep this. Let's keep doing this. So I'm going to severely limit screen time. There's not going to be much technology in the homes during the school week. It's going to be a lot of education, a lot of wisdom, a lot of being mindful, being present, expeditions, going on hikes, things like that, going out in nature, learning how to garden. I mean, there's so much to education that is not covered in the schools that the parents have to dabble in. And the parent just has to be available, I think, too, because parents are, mom and dad are typically working 9 to 5. And when they come home, they're beat. But you just have to do it for the beginning years of their life, and then maybe somewhere in between a little bit. And you can probably get sports coaches and things like that to help out. It's a community-based effort, because if you try to do it yourself, it's a lot of work. But if you can find people to help, then that's going to be important. And I think people, when they are seeking that homeschooling program, if you can get that out online, they're going to love that, because they're going to say, wow, like I want to do that with my child. And I know it's the beginning stages, so you're still getting everything set up, but definitely keep me in the loop with that. And I'll definitely post it out on all my socials so people can stay up to date with that, because like I said, I'm sure many people are interested in the homeschooling aspect that you're going down.
Well, it's going to be, yes, it's going to be a challenge. I'm going to follow a curriculum though. Like for the education, that's not going to be me. Like I'm not going to teach the maths. I'm going to support her in the maths, but I need an expert to actually who knows how to teach children, those things. But we're going to follow that out of the UK. There's some really good UK curriculums. But outside that, I'm actually in a really unique opportunity, because my ex-wife and I actually split, and we share the children. So I will have them for 3 or 4 days every week, and she will have them for the remaining time. And she has bought a small farm. So when they go there, they are planting the food. They're actually harvesting the food because she sells the produce. My 11-year-old is in charge of the chickens. And so they're going to give a very sort of earthy, holistic education with her. And when they come to me, I'm more, at the moment, focused on their academics. That's not her interest. Mm-hmm. So we've actually decided it's great, because neither of us are responsible for the whole week.
Right.
And strange enough, when we split, there was this, and your parents that listen to this might be interested. So most parents, there's 2 of them, the kids are doing something. You can't, as the male or female, you can't just back away and just concentrate on what you're doing, like online work or whatever. You sort of have to be in the household, contributing in some form or another. So let's say my wife was cooking dinner. I would be helping with the dinner whilst having one eye on the kids, maybe trying to answer a few emails. So I wasn't doing anything particularly well. I wasn't helping well. I wasn't doing my emails well. I wasn't looking after the kids very well. But when we split, you become a single parent. Now you're 100% in charge. Plus, you're 100% focused on the kids. You can't do the work and the kids at the same time. And so when they leave me and they go to my ex-wife's, it allows me then to be 100% lifestyle coach. And I don't have to be a parent anymore. And so I've actually, both of us, my wife and I, ex-wife and I, agree, this is amazing. We've both found this way where we can do 100% parenting and 100% work. It's brilliant. So I don't know how we could do that in a sort of a family that's not split, but at the same time, it's something to consider for parents. Like I try to advise my friends and my clients and say, look, one of you be in charge. It's just way easier. Just one of you do it.
Well, let's hope that statement doesn't increase the divorce rate. But
we'll do it together. But something. I don't know.
It's a team effort to raise children. So understanding having a male and a female in the household to raise children is going to be quintessential to their mental development, right? Because they need that male figure and that woman figure to be balanced. Education is one of those tricky things that there's so many avenues that a person can go down. And what's right? What's wrong? I mean, it's going to be totally situational. Some people are going to do well homeschooling. Some people need that environment where they're in a classroom setting. It just depends on their upbringing, the child, and then the parent has to understand their child. Lucky for you, your daughter was able to come to you, write a letter and saying, hey, I would like to be homeschooled. So she was able to relay that to you. While there's going to be some kids who keep that inside and they say, I'm just going to suffer. So that's a good thing for you. But if I can from you, please share any last words for the audience. And then, of course, please tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, I'd like to say this to anyone who's going through a transition in life, that you don't have to do that by yourself. There are people who can help you. Lifestyle coaching, business coaching, whatever the transition is, there are people who have that wisdom that they can share with you, and they can point you in the right direction, and they can help you make the best decisions for you and your family going forward. And to be able to find me, you can find me on my website, which is edpaget.com. That's edpaget.com. And I'm on Instagram at ed.paget. And YouTube is Ed Paget as well. So anything to do with Ed Paget, they usually find me.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Edward Paget, for coming on Coaching in Session. Our conversation has been a bundle of wisdom. So I know anyone listening to this podcast or watching the video is going to find a lot of nuggets in here, and they're going to say, this is where I need to begin. And whether it be with you, with me, or just maybe going to the website or your YouTube channel and seeing what's available, they're going to say, okay, this is the start. And that's the point. We want you to start to begin. And then once that ball is rolling, let's keep it rolling. Let's keep that momentum. Because once we get that ball rolling per se, and we get moving into something better, then we have a good opportunity for ourselves and our family. Again, it's a huge pleasure. And, we'll stay in touch, of course, because what you talk about is so amazing.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank my guest, Edward Paget, for coming on Coaching in Session. Again, a huge pleasure, so much wisdom, so much knowledge, and all his information will be in the description box below. So if anyone is interested in reaching out or to stay in touch to what he's going to do, probably social media is going to be the best way to stay up to date with any new programs he creates or any type of new teaching he starts to implement in his coaching process. And just to let you know, coaching is just one of those things that you might think you get to the end and you had a coach and you were able to go on that journey. And coaching is not going to be a forever thing. It's not like therapy where you're going to be in therapy for 17 years and wonder why you still feel crappy. Coaching does something different than therapy. We are going to attack the innate feelings your brain wants to feel. It's not so much of, well, tell me about that emotion, and then we stay there. We don't stay in any place that doesn't serve us. Yes, we feel it and we let it go. But what we're looking for is to create a lifestyle that is worth living. So if you're in a place that the life that you have is not 100% worth it yet, let's get you into that place. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com. If you want to work with me, revenconcepts.com. And I will be more than happy to see what's going on and then start to implement the process of repair, discovery, and then your best life yet. Until next time, take care.